Don't do it. As a child, she was just a story told at bedtime, a reason not to get up in the middle of the night. He'd pull the blankets over his head, sleep with his back away from the window, until he got older, and he listened as his little sister heard the same stories. The stories of the witch in the woods. He'd wonder, as he watched the terror in her eyes, why he now felt awakened by the tales. Suddenly he felt a bit silly, finding himself gazing out his window at night, wishing to see her. And one night he did. She stepped out of the tree line, sheer black lace draped across her body, lips a bloody red, and eyes, those eyes, they were deeper and more promising than anything in this miserable town. And he always was a bit of a brat, wanting what he couldn't have. She was no different. This woman, this god, dancing beneath the moonlight in her glimmering folklore. She was everything he didn't know he needed. He continued forward, into the woods, helplessly and entirely bewitched. Welcome to Mirrors, a collection of horrors, history, and hauntings. I'm your host, Gabby, and I'm currently writing, researching, and traveling for season 2. But it's October, it's spooky season, it's my favorite time of year, and I wanted to do something a little special. I'm here to take you to a place most mysterious. A place that, despite my many attempts, I will never fully be able to capture. A place where words will never be enough, and the darkness will never be fully contained. The mind of a creative. This is the start of what will be an ongoing topic on the podcast where we delve into the real stories and hauntings behind our favorite horror movies. And today, here in the midst of the season of the witch, I bring you the origins of the Blair Witch Project. Let's start off with some film history, why don't we? In 1896, a 50-second short film by the Lumiere brothers aired at the cinema. Not only was it one of the first films ever, but the first to be screened. Audiences sat facing a large screen, watching in awe as it came to life, casting light across their expectant faces. Suddenly, those faces were reflecting something new. An emotion somewhere between anticipation, confusion, and pure terror. For a train was coming right towards them. People leaped from their seats, running to the back of the theater. Some hid behind their seats, others sat stunned, bracing for impact. But the train never came, remaining within the confines of the screen. Watching arrival of a train today, it may not seem like anything particularly revolutionary. It is quite literally a 50-second video of a train pulling into a French station. But back then, the way the camera captured movement and progression was entirely unprecedented, and those viewing it on a big screen were overtaken by feelings they had never felt before. That was the same year that Les Manoirs du Diable, or House of the Devil, was released, which is credited as the first horror film. Although it wasn't trying to be scary, it incorporated ghosts, skeletons, and the devil himself, immediately establishing the supernatural and paranormal within the realms of horror. The early 1900s saw the first incarnation of Frankenstein and Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, while the golden age of horror in the 1930s produced defining films of the genre. The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari and Nosferatu were among the first that actually aimed to scare people. Just as horror was seeming to find itself, it was hit with the Hays Code, which placed strict limitations on the entertainment industry as a whole and the content allowed in movies. The 1932 film Freaks was heavily censored and cut before being put out into the world. The horror films released in the 40s and 50s stepped away from the supernatural and decided instead to embrace the all too real fear of nuclear warfare, with movies like Godzilla and The War of the Worlds. This was also when Alfred Hitchcock broke onto the scene, representing the importance of individuality and style in the genre. Moving into the 60s, horror took a hard turn towards lower budget movies, when audiences wanted nothing but gore. Horror was no longer centered around the threat of the unseen, but the imminent danger before your very eyes. That's when we got one of the first zombie movies, Night of the Living Dead. A cultural fear of the occult in the 70s brought paranormal horror back full storm, with some of the most famous movies of all time, from The Exorcist to The Shining and Poltergeist, released throughout the decade and into the early 80s. Then there's the slasher films, overtaking the entertainment industry and pop culture throughout the 80s and 90s, with Halloween, Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street, Scream, and so many more. Now we look to modern horror. Think Jordan Peele, one of the most powerful and innovative voices in the space, creating films like Get Out and Nope, which tell engaging stories while providing social commentary on racism in the United States. The Conjuring universe, creatively telling paranormal tales that span decades and continents, yet are connected in the most intricate ways and grounded in the real-life cases investigated by Ed and Lorraine Warren. Movies like Megan and Smile, sending real people to real events like baseball games and award shows, dressed in costume or smiling creepily directly to camera to market their movies. Horror always has been, and always will be, a space of reinvention. You may be surprised to know that I didn't grow up loving scary movies. I just hadn't ever really got into them. And then I fell in love with writing. I went to college and got really serious about being a writer. And I found my voice in the horror genre. I am so excited by the endless possibilities. There's always a new way to tell a story, a new question to ask that challenges conventions. And as a creative, that is just really, really inspiring. And of course, it helped that I'm quite drawn to the paranormal. There's one movie, one that I intentionally left out in my brief overview of the history of horror. And it's one of my favorites because it was unconventional. And like the first film shown in theaters, it took viewers to a dizzying place, leaving them questioning reality. Audience members got up from their seats, nauseous and confused, some obsessed, some having absolutely hated what they just watched. There wasn't much middle ground in that sense. The intrigue this film inspired, though, was undeniable. And that film, of course, is The Blair Witch Project. Released in 1999, a film first dreamt up by two college students, going on to premiere at Sundance and gross about $250 million. For this episode, I traveled to Maryland to visit a few of its filming locations, because that's another thing about horror. These stories, however fantastical and imaginative, come from some form of reality. Be it a real person, a real story, a true crime case, or at the very least, the realest, rawest human fears. We started out at the Burkittsville Cemetery. In the movie, this is the first stop for Heather, Josh, and Mike, three film students creating a documentary. They go to Burkittsville, which was once the fictional town of Blair, where Heather introduces the local legend her film will explore, the Blair Witch. In the cemetery, she observes the number of children buried there, all of whom died during the 1940s. Being in Burkittsville and chatting with locals about the Blair Witch Project really showed how this film has established itself within the local folklore. Residents spoke about it in a very contradicting way, where they were acknowledging that it's purely fiction, but then also talking about it all like it really happened. Staged interviews were included in the film as well, featuring actors as Burkittsville locals. Heather, Josh, and Mike didn't know the content of these interviews before actually conducting them, One of the most impactful interviews for me is a mother and daughter. The woman is telling various stories she'd heard about the Blair Witch, and her daughter covers her mouth. This interaction just feels so real and natural that even knowing it's fiction, you have to pause. It really does feel like a documentary. Director Daniel Myrick grew up near the woods and swamps of Florida and was, in a way, haunted by a peculiar image. He kept envisioning stick figures hanging from the trees, which confused him and totally creeped him out. Earlier this year, I visited the swamps of New Orleans, and I could totally see what would have taken his imagination to this place. It's a beautiful environment, really unlike no other, but there is like so much mystery beneath it. This image that Daniel had conjured stayed with him throughout his childhood and his time as a film student at the University of Central Florida. His friend, Eduardo Sanchez, had grown up in Montgomery County, Maryland. Together, they evolved the idea, writing a 35-page script about a witch in the woods of Maryland. They put out a casting call looking for actors to improvise dialogue and play extremely challenging roles for a film that would be shot under very difficult conditions. I sat down with Ed to discuss how he and Daniel created the lore behind the Blair Witch and how growing up in Maryland influenced him.
I grew up in Tacoma Park and then Rockville, and there was like a stretch of woods behind my apartment complex, and it was just a creek, and then maybe 100 feet on each side. But for me, that was like the deep wilderness of the Northwest. So I was really big into Bigfoot, and anything supernatural. So I would always be in those woods and expecting to see Bigfoot. And I always had and I would spend a lot of time in those woods. So there was something about, the woods that like scared me, but also fascinated me. And Maryland is like at least where I grew up is like, just lots of trees and woods everywhere. And there's never like an absence of that. So you're almost like in this, you're in this world surrounded by trees and by a forest. So and then, just like, and then you go up north and it's all, mostly just, wilderness and forests and, so it's a beautiful place to be, but definitely like, that, instilled like this appreciation for, the Maryland geography for sure.
Seneca Creek State Park is now known as the Blair Witch Woods because of its fame as the filming location, but also because of how a fictional story has been brought into reality. That's the thing about these woods themselves. They're not necessarily haunted, but so many people believed the Blair Witch was real. They came here believing that, bringing their fear, walking these trails with that very real adrenaline coursing through their veins, investigating paranormal claims, and sometimes even performing dark rituals and channeling this energy. How did you pick Seneca Creek State Park then out of all of the woods in your area? What drew you to that location for the movie?
Well, I mean, we picked Seneca Creek because mostly just for logistical reasons. Like
Mhm.
Dan and I went all over the place, looking for land. We wanted to actually find some private land so that we could, do whatever we wanted. Not that we were going to do anything crazy, but at least, have a controlled access over woods. But we couldn't find anybody with enough land to let us, use it. And also, a lot of times it was just in the middle of nowhere, so just the expense of keeping people over there would have been, impossible for us. So it just happened to be that Seneca Creek State Park was like the closest park to where I lived, and we had my wife, my she was my girlfriend, but now my wife had a townhouse right there in Germantown, which is like about a mile and a half from Seneca Creek State Park, and that I acted as like a production center. And then when Dan and I went out to Seneca Creek State Park, we were like, this is perfect. It was like big enough, but about 2 square miles, where you could like get lost and actually have like different kinds of woods and kinds of terrains. There was like creeks, there was logs going over the water. There was like rocks. There was all kinds of cool stuff. in a very, small area. And it just happened to be that, our production office was right there. So it kind of became something like, well, this is it. This is kind of, fate telling us that this is the best place. Um, and then we went and asked permission, and they were like, yeah, that's fine. And then, once we started getting down to the nitty gritty of like really like signing contracts and stuff with the locations, with the state, the park, the state park, authority, they were like, "Oh, well, you can shoot here, but you can't shoot here at night. You have to leave. You can't have any fires." And we were like, so this is like literally like like 3 or 4 days before we started shooting. So finally, we got somebody up in the, higher up in the government somewhere to call them, the park service, and say, "Hey, let these guys, they're local filmmakers, and let these guys shoot at night." So that was we got really lucky because I mean we were at a point where like we were just going to go anyway because we were just young and had nothing to lose, and we had spent all the money, we had cast the crew, the crew was there, the cast was there. But we would have definitely gotten busted because the ranger, well, they visited us a couple times while we were
Mhm.
shooting, and luckily we had permission, or else they would have been like, all right, you guys get the hell out of here. So
Blair Witch was a found footage film. In their pursuit of the Blair Witch, Heather, Josh, and Mike get lost in the woods. Josh gets separated from the group and presumably killed by the Blair Witch. The end of the movie marks their disappearance, and the footage was all that was left of them. This was one of the first horror movies to actually explore creative marketing. There was a website that was put out before the film was even released and had quite a following. People genuinely believed these actors were missing. Once the film was out, that belief was even stronger. The actors' families were even getting condolence cards, and they played into it for a little while until the actors eventually started doing appearances and press. Something unique about the Blair Witch Project is that you don't ever actually see the Blair Witch. There's this slow burn that's never quite satisfied. The filmmakers did this to lean into the authenticity, to tell the story of these woods themselves, to create fear of those woods. It was shot over 8 days in October 1997, created using a survivalist approach. The actors were pretty much on their own, having been trained to shoot their own film and audio, camping in the woods, living off a dwindling food source, and discovering the plot as they went. Heather Donahue, Joshua Leonard, and Michael C. Williams were absolutely critical to what this film became. Like I mentioned earlier, their dialogue was improvised, including that brilliant close up where Heather, terrified in the dark woods, apologizes for creating the project in the first place, admitting defeat to the Blair Witch. The actors themselves hadn't even read the script. Ed and Daniel left film canisters in the woods to tell the actors what was coming next in the plot, and they'd make noises for the actors to react to. I can imagine that being there for 8 days, even knowing you're filming a project, would still be a very intense, emotionally charged experience. I asked Ed about how they maintained that authentic feel throughout the filming.
I mean, the original idea, like I said earlier, was that it was going to be a documentary. So
Mhm.
the stuff in the woods was only going to be like half an hour of the movie. Like we needed like 3 or 4 like cool little scenes, maybe some creepy, and then some creepy stuff, and then the rest of it was going to be documentary. Examining the footage and explaining what the authorities think that happened out there, or whatever. But the authenticity was basically that was the main thing. We wanted like the movie to feel completely real. We had seen, other movies that had pretended to be documentaries, but there's always this level of like, it's like an actor that so it's not a documentary because it's an actor, or like, they light up, at night they light up the woods. You're like, woods wouldn't look that way to just a camera. They're obviously lit it. So for us, it was like low tech because we had no money, and also we just wanted to be real. Like the shots in the woods, it's like, just a light on top of the camera blasting out into the woods, and that's all you see. And then for the actors, like, we went and, we took a long time to cast those 3 people. And we knew that they were like great at improv. We knew that they were all smart, that they were all going to give us a lot of material. Um, and we just kind of we left them out there as much as we could. They slept out there. We tried to like not have any contact with them. And like you said, we gave them directing notes, 3 or 4 times a day, along with food and batteries and, new cassettes and stuff to tape. Um, so I think that just them being tired and them being out there and, and being in this cold woods and uncomfortable sleeping bags, plus the fact that they were like really talented actors, I think just they had this playground and they just created all this stuff. And then us as directors, we had to go back, we had like 22 hours of footage. And we had to go back and almost like a real documentary and like say, okay, where's the story here? Where let's take from here and, pull this forward, take this to the end, just kind of adjust it. And also almost like we wrote the movie in the editing room, like a lot of documentaries, you
Yeah.
write as you edit. Um, so that's how, and again, it was like there was this one over kind of like overarching, commandment that we had, which was like everything has to look real. The dialogue has to be real, the lighting and everything. That's why we didn't have any music, and it doesn't sound like a normal movie. It's very low tech, but that's how we, made it look, like it was a home movie. And I think a lot of people. I mean, obviously, a lot of people loved it because of that, but I think a lot of people hated it because they were like, where's Jason? Where's the good lighting, and where's like the sex scene and the fun, where's the horror beats? Where's the chase through the woods with a knife? And that movie was Blair Witch was not that movie. It was literally like a home movie. And I think a lot of people were just couldn't, make the leap to say, okay, let me sit down and give it a chance. Um, but so yeah, it's just interesting that like um, we created something that even to this day, I think has still has impacts new viewers because of the fact that like we literally kind of played out the movie in the woods, and those actors gave us these great performances. And it was just it was an experiment that just happened to work.
Before I take you to the Blair Witch Woods, I want to tell you the story of Moll Dyer, a woman living in Leonardtown, Maryland in the late 1600s. In the winter of 1697, an epidemic overtook the community, and families were being devastated by influenza. Everyone turned against Moll, accusing her of witchcraft, believing she was the cause of the rapidly spreading illness. Her cabin was burned to the ground by an angry mob, and she escaped into the woods on a cold February night. A young boy found her body a few days later. She had died, likely from the elements, one of her hands frozen to a rock, the other reaching up to the sky. In the 1970s, a writer named Philip H. Love located this exact rock, and it was moved to downtown Leonardtown where Moll could be honored. Many believe they can still make out Moll's handprint on the rock, although that may not be all she left behind. For that rock is known to be cursed. The story goes that, to this day, anyone who touches the rock will fall ill, although it now sits behind a protective cover to prevent further erosion. Moll had originally been from England, where she was an indentured servant alongside her two brothers. They'd moved to the West Indies and then settled in Maryland. Researchers who have looked into Moll's story believe she was a healer and spiritualist, which left her as the target when epidemics and crop failures and other problems arose in the community. She was completely ostracized and entirely misunderstood. The rock has been the center of various paranormal encounters. While standing before it, people have heard whispers, felt unexplained gusts of wind from the rock, or seen ghostly apparitions. Perhaps Moll, a woman who allegedly channeled her own intuition and power, who believed in spiritual energy, left her own spirit behind in this rock. Maybe it's not cursed, and that illness that people experience is more so the result of her anger towards the community. I believe in the fact that land can hold on to the past, so it's entirely plausible to me that Moll lives on through the geology of the spot where she died. And Moll's story just so happens to be one of the real-life inspirations behind the Blair Witch Project. We are trying to find the coffin rock from the movie, which is where Heather reads about the history and the folklore of the Blair Witch. So, that is what we are looking for right now. One of the most eerie scenes of the film shows Heather standing before Coffin Rock, reading from a book titled The Blair Witch Cult. It's really just a movie prop used to outline the hauntings of the Blair Witch. Daniel and Ed worked with the Sci Fi Channel to create a mockumentary, released in conjunction with the Blair Witch Project. It was titled Curse of the Blair Witch, and it dove deeper into the story presented by Heather as she stood before Coffin Rock. The story goes: a woman in the 1700s was convicted of witchcraft, banished from the fictional town of Blair. Ellie Kenward was her name, and she had allegedly been bleeding local children to death. She was taken into the woods on a frosty winter night, tied to a tree, and left to die. After Ellie's death, children of the town began to disappear, and throughout the town's history, rumors were spread about a woman haunting the woods, snatching children from their homes and murdering them. A young girl named Eileen had drowned in the creek, with people swearing to have seen a hand pull her under. Mysterious stick figures were also being found hanging from the trees and scattering the forest floor. In 1886, a little girl named Robin Weaver came home from playing in the woods, telling this unbelievable story about a lady who she saw floating. This woman led her to a house in the woods, and a search party later went out to find the woman when they stumbled across a gruesome sight at Coffin Rock, where 5 men were murdered, mutilated, and tied together with symbols carved into their skin. Again, this story is fictional, although Coffin Rock is visited frequently, with some of those visitors believing wholeheartedly that these murders actually happened. Murders at the hands of the Blair Witch herself. We used the EMF detector in the area and caught no spikes in energy. I didn't feel anything either, although it was quite eerie when we looked up and saw one of those iconic stick figures sitting atop Coffin Rock. What do you think of like how the Blair Witch is now so established in the paranormal and lots of people are going to Seneca Creek State Park and other filming locations seeking out the paranormal? I mean, did you have any experiences on set that like has led to that, or do you think it's just like how the blurring of fact and fiction kind of came into play?
No, I mean, look, we didn't have anything weird happen. I mean,
Mhm.
luckily nobody got hurt, and I mean, it was times when it was very creepy out there for sure. But I've
Mhm.
never, I mean, other than like when I one day when I was scouting, I ran into like this big buck, like full antlers, and
Wow.
like was like 10 feet from me, and I was like in the middle of nowhere. I'm like, if this thing just kind of runs through at me and just fucking cuts me or whatever, I'm done. I got no, this is before cell phones. And actually, it was cell phones, but cell phones had no service out there at all. So I was kind of, so other than that, and being creeped out by the woods, just being out there, in the middle of the night. Um, but, um, but I think that the people's fascination with it is because like Blair Witch, the movie itself doesn't answer anything, doesn't give any answers. So it kind of, it kind of invites this investigation, kind of like the people that like to do that, like to investigate, like to like look into things. It gives you a kind of a reason. It's a cool place and you can visit and you can, it was a movie, whatever. And I think that, I mean, I'm not sure if anybody's like really, I mean, there are people who actually think that the legend is still real. I'm not sure, if they're coming out there for that reason or whatever, but I think just people like to, you know, be scared, and I think the whole idea of like the supernatural is kind of it's a coping mechanism for our mortality, because like if there's supernatural stuff, then maybe there is something after death,
Yeah.
and I think it just kind of it creeps us out and makes us scared and whatever, but it gives us hope that there is something else. So I think people kind of are just not lot certain people are very naturally drawn to that energy, and and if they can find it out there, then that's great.
Turning back from Coffin Rock, I was faced with the woods that we just ventured through. I took a picture on my film camera just because of how struck I was by this image. I feel like up until this point, we were just focused on like getting to Coffin Rock, finding these different locations. So I was looking at the forest through smaller details, through markers, following the trail, just, smaller pieces of a much larger picture. And this was the first time I really took it in as a whole. And to me, it represented this dizzying effect that the Blair Witch Project has had, the disorientation, the blurring of fact and fiction. One reason I love horror so much is because I am a visual person. Even as a writer, I see what I write through visuals. I like to ground each podcast episode in evocative visuals. And horror just offers these deep, dark, powerful images that are unlike anything else. So let's talk about where the Blair Witch Project leaves us. On a shot that shifts focus as the camera falls to the ground. After an hour and 20 minutes of handheld shaky footage, viewers are left in stillness. Then there's that infamous image of Mike facing the corner, paralleling the legend of children having to face the corner when they were tortured and murdered. And then it's over. Roll credits. So, what was your decision to leave no answers at the end of the movie and to have such a mystery there?
Well, the reason the movie ended that way was we had no money and we couldn't, you know, like I always say to people, if like we had, a couple, if we had like some more money to build a suit, we would have had a suit and
Mm.
some crazy Blair Witch looking creature, or you know, Mike levitating. I don't know, we would do all kinds of stupid things there. But we had no money, so we just kind of had to go with the simplest, kind of ending. Um, but for us, like, the movie was, the original idea for the movie was it was going to be more of a documentary. So it was going to have like interviews with, police and detectives and search people and family of Heather, Mike, and Josh, um, so the original idea for the movie was it was going to give you a lot more information. Like it wasn't going to tell you like what exactly happened to these kids, but it was going to explain, all the different types of things that happened, in that area. And they were going to basically leave you with questions, but at least a few more answers as to like what exactly is happening out there. Um, so when we finished the movie and we decided this is the movie, we're going to we decided to cut out all the documentary stuff because it was like slowing the movie down. And you know it was kind of a mystery, but we felt that like we couldn't like you know like good horror movies, and especially like the ones that deal with supernatural, you can't explain everything. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
Like you can't, because there is no explanation. Like the part of the fear is like the unknown. Like, the same thing with like why ghosts are still, people are still interested in ghosts and they're still interested in Bigfoot and, in UFOs, and because there haven't been any answers, like, as soon as if somebody would have caught a Bigfoot and said, "Oh, here it is. It's actually just an ape that went, missing or whatever," then you'd be like, "Oh, I guess that's not scary anymore, whatever." Um, and the same thing with ghosts and and UFOs and stuff. So people, they love that mystery, and I think that a good mystery doesn't have all the answers, obviously. And so for us, it was like, let's just give them this journey. These kids in the woods and fighting and losing the map and then being hunted, and then at the end they end up in this house and something happens to them in that house, um, and they're never seen from again, heard from again. So it was kind of, that was the ending that we wanted. That it was we didn't want it to have any answers. We wanted the audience to come out and go, "Oh my God, what was that? And was it Josh? Was it?" And even to this day, there's like people on the Blair Witch Facebook page. There's always like, "Oh man, I wonder if this, whatever, all theories." And I love the theories, and I think Dan and I, um, we we set out to do something mysterious on purpose, and we wanted people to like, um, think about and make up stuff about the ending and make up stuff about the mythology. And we always felt that like there's nothing written in stone in the Blair Witch world. Like, anything could happen out there. It's this crazy little kind of Bermuda Triangle area, and it's never going to have all the answers. And also, and plus, if you had got all the answers, it would just be lame. It'd be like, ah,
Yeah.
that's what it was. Whatever. So I think the mystery is part of what keeps people coming back, and also like the fascinating part about horror movies in general is like the idea of like explaining some of it, but leaving some to just like not sure what the hell happened there, but it was creepy. So that's kind of the way we structured the movie.
That's what I love about horror so much, specifically the Blair Witch is just that mystery. And like I love the ending scene. I think that that is just like the perfect way it could have ended. Unfortunately, the house used to film this last scene was demolished, so I wasn't able to actually visit it. But it is cool to know that this house was one more way that the film maintained such a raw feel because the actors hadn't seen it until actually filming the scene. Their on screen reactions are their initial reactions. Blair Witch Project has really influenced my creative style because I deeply value raw, gritty storytelling. It's also shaped how I document my paranormal investigations and share them with you. That being said, I know that no film will ever be able to do what Blair Witch did, at least in the same way. It was so interesting to me to hear the stories behind the creation of the film, to speak with one of the directors, to know just how important place was in guiding the plot. So, my final question for you is what advice would you have for future horror writers and filmmakers?
For future horror filmmakers and writers, I mean, you have to like, uh, you have to experience fear. Like put yourself into situations. I mean, not dangerous situations, obviously, be safe, but like, like for me, a lot of the things that kind of came out in Blair Witch and came out of my other work is that the fear of the woods, camping, go camping and in the middle of the night you hear something and oh my god, what is that? Um, and also just kind of like you have to kind of even if you don't believe in it, you have to kind of open your mind to the idea of the supernatural and like how it affects real people and how there are people, people are religious all over the world. That's a form of supernatural, it's a supernatural entity, um so like learn to respect that and not like make fun of it no matter what it is. um and try to pull the human reaction, the human fear, um out of a certain situation. And the biggest thing is don't try to like copy what you see in the movie theaters. Like don't try to make something the same just because it was successful. First of all, you don't have the budget, so it's not going to look like those movies anyway. And so take what you have, whether it's like your religious experiences, your experiences in the water, or like out in the woods, or whatever it is that where you know had this fear, and transport it to somewhere that you can to your world. Like if if you have access to an office, for some, well, then maybe write a movie in an office, office building. If you have, access to some woods, do something in the woods. You have a cabin, like that's the horror is so much based on, so much location based. Um, and then like just kind of don't be afraid to experiment. Like I think a lot of the ingenuity in filmmaking comes from the independent world, and especially the horror independent world, because horror audiences are a lot more open to just weird crap. Like they literally will sit through Blair Witch Project, but also they love stuff that's like something that's designed and beautifully lit. And there's so many kind of variations, and there's so many subgenres that horror audiences will accept bad sound or bad shooting or even bad acting. You know what I mean? Like um they always find something to grab onto. So just do something like that. Try to do something you've never seen before. I know that's easier said than done. um but even if it's just something where like you take a situation that you've seen a million times and just take it and move it to the water, or move it to so many, like Alien is just a monster movie in space. It's got some really cool things and whatever, but it's basically just a haunted house movie with an creature in a house killing people. um so like that's a good example of something that it's just a kind of a basic story, and then you can kind of start adding stuff. So just be that way. um you know uh if you look at all, most of like the independent, the big horror movies that kind of came out of um the independent world, they all have like it's like Terrifier. It looks low budget, but it's creepy, it's scary. The clown is fun, whatever. There's the vile, the gore or whatever if you're into that. Skinamarink is a completely different kind of movie, but again, experimental and cheap looking, but it still works. You can go down the line and all these movies that even like the ones that have like a real budget, there's something about them that feels kind of raw. And I think that's what you want to capture. So just try to be as original as possible, take chances because like this is the only time once you start making money in the movies, and once you start depending on that money to like to pay your mortgage, you there's just all kinds of rules pop up. um like an example, like once you get established, you're gonna join the union, one of the unions. The unions are not going to let you do certain things that you would do in the independent world, like Blair Witch. We were all non-union. There's no way you can shoot that movie with union rules. Like there's no union rule for leaving the actors in the woods for 24 hours a day. There's just, you can't do that. Same thing with directing. You can't direct for 24 hours. It's just, you can't be on call 24 hours a day. So and not only that, but it's also you have somebody paying for you that it's going to be making a lot of the decisions that you know you're not going to be able to make some of those decisions. So right now, when you're at home and you're or at school and you're like writing your film, there are literally no limitations other than budget and stuff. But don't let that be a hindrance. Like that, like let that be a strength. You know what I mean? Be innovative and just kind of just again, like just go out there and do something, even if you fall flat on your face. Like at least every time you make a movie you learn. You know what I'm saying? And I know John Waters had and I don't know exactly the exact quote, but it was years ago. He said, the best thing that could happen to a up like a rising filmmaker or somebody who's filmmaker in training is to have a complete failure of a movie. Like just and I actually had a big failure before Blair Witch, and it's super painful. And it's like one of your kids, not being loved, but he's right. Like it really did teach me, a lot of things. And I think without those, failures, we wouldn't have had, the know-how to do Blair Witch. So again, just go out there and do it. And there's no excuses now. Like, you can shoot your movie on your phone,
Yeah.
so and edit on your laptop, so there aren't any like equipment limitations like there were when I was younger. You had to know somebody with a camera and how to load film, and it was very expensive to transfer the film and all that stuff. So that's kind of my advice. Go play, have fun, and just be as creative as you can, and don't be afraid.
I loved that response. Experience fear. That's really been my goal with mirrors, is just to get to haunted places, both that I've been to and that I haven't been to, experience them, delve into their history, challenge myself, go to orphanage basements alone, understand my connection to the paranormal, and of course, use that for future creative stories. But yeah, it's just this film has always been a really big part of why I love horror, why I love the paranormal, even if, I've kind of decided the woods aren't haunted, it still is just, it is a part of the paranormal world today. So I loved creating this episode. Thank you so much to Ed for speaking with me. Thank you all for listening or watching, because I'm on YouTube now. If you haven't, well, I hope you would have, because I would have spoiled it. But yeah, even if you have, go watch The Blair Witch Project again, because it is just a horror masterpiece and you need to see it again to really appreciate it for what it is. So, thank you. I will see you soon. Until next time, stay spooky.